This is the DarshanTalks podcast. Regulatory guy, irregular podcast with host Darshan Kulkarni. I am Major Hoffman. You can find the show on Twitter at DarshanTalks or the show's website at DarshanTalks.com. Hey guys, I'm here with Darshan Kulkarni. My name is Major, and today we're going to discuss how to minimize the clinical trial patient loss. This is the part two. The part one, we discussed strategies to help foster community involvement. The complexity of the study, how to address that with your patients or subjects, how to address the fear of the unknown as it comes back. And keep in mind, this is how to keep your patients in your trial after they're aware and they come into the trial. Today, we're going to discuss the patient's ease of commuting and reminders for the patient. Darshan, how do we start off the ease of commuting? Ease of community too.
You start by a community, obviously, but the key piece here is recognizing that we like to design studies the way we've always designed studies, and we start off by saying, you know what, I know that I can go to these doctors and they'll do my study for me. It'll be great because you know what, I don't have to change things too much, and it's going to be awesome, and not much thinking is required. Here's the problem: patients are now saying, I am the one on whom you're doing these studies. I am the one who would potentially benefit from the results of these studies. You need to start working a little bit around my schedule. And I think that's what's changing. So if you want your patients to be part of your study, make things easier for them. Talk about home visits, maybe having a nurse go over, maybe having a visiting nurse go out and talk to these patients, maybe having her draw blood. That way, is it necessary for the patient to pull time out of their day, come all the way to you, when a nurse can achieve the same goal and go to 5, 6, 7 patients in the same shot? Similarly, transportation to and from the study visits. A lot of these study patients are often seniors, and they are saying, you know what, I need to arrange transportation. Major, you and I have discussed in the past this idea of how Uber and Lyft are actually saying, we'll help get patients to their doctor's visits.
Right.
Maybe using Uber and Lyft for your study visits. That's not something people are talking about, but it absolutely needs to happen. This would be so useful for a senior person trying to figure out his or her transportation to the doctor's office, and now you've got, okay, the pharmaceutical company will help arrange this for you.
And it's important to understand that if your demographic is one of an older demographic or older population group, they may not be aware of the transportation options that are available. If you use Uber all the time, that's great. However, they may not be as mobile as you.
Great point.
And they don't know that is even an option or how to even get that started. So if you want to have some sort of onboarding process for them to let them know of some sort of concierge service that includes an Uber or a Lyft or some sort of taxi service, that would be great.
And that's great. And that's absolutely important, because you know what? One of the things I should mention, and you sort of hinted at that, is just because you offer Uber and Lyft doesn't mean they know how to order Uber and Lyft. You may still need to order it for them. And that concierge service would necessarily help with that process. So it's important to keep that in mind. The next one is telehealth. And there have been studies already
going back to that
using
real
this.
quick, Darshan, that's kind of like a free business idea. White glove concierge service for clinical trials.
There you go. Now you know how to benefit from these podcasts, right? Just listen in and find out.
Free tips all day.
Free tips. The funny part is, a lot of these are things that have not been done, and these are actual valid business ideas that I personally just don't have the time or the energy to go after. So kudos to you guys. You're getting free stuff, free ideas.
But you were saying, did you say telepharmacy before?
So we're going to talk about that. So this idea of telehealth and telepharmacy, this idea that, okay, you've got these patients who you could send people home to, that you could get them out to your location, but do they actually need to come? Do they need to, couldn't they just talk to someone using a system like Skype or using a telehealth system that might exist? And that could be extremely useful in talking to a study coordinator. It may be extremely useful when you're talking to the doctor. Obviously, with telehealth, you need to have certain controls in place, and that becomes important. So Skype may or may not be the right direction. However, it may be part of the answer. So maybe the concierge that Major discussed a few seconds ago, that could be a Skype conversation. Or maybe they just need to use what Epic or someone else has, or Cerner may have around telehealth. Telepharmacy becomes another conversation where the pharmacy will prepare the study drug and send it to the patients. And again, if there are questions about how do you set up a clinical trial pharmacy, we can have a whole separate conversation about that, and we probably will actually, Major. So stay tuned for that conversation. Another conversation is this idea of, well, everyone's got these Alexas in their house. One of the big deals this Thanksgiving has been the $25 Google or Alexa sort of bot that sits in your house, and you can ask it questions.
Google.
Well, why not have...
Cancel. Dude, you can't say that too loud, man.
I'm sorry. I've had this happen far too often.
Everyone has.
I know. But that's the best part. It's these easily available methods of engaging, and they could use these voice assistants to explain to patients. So you might be able to put in some predetermined answers for predetermined questions. You may also be able to use those as ways of connecting directly to a medical affairs department or to a clinical trials department, and having questions directly asked to the sponsor if they wanted to.
Just a slight side note on that. That may also be an important thing to include in one of the fears of listening devices maybe recording because of the recent issue with Amazon and how one of their customers, right? In case you weren't...
Oh, two of the customers.
Well, two of the customers.
Did you hear about the latest one?
Oh, no, it happened again?
This was like 2 or 3 days ago.
Oh, man. So and the one that I heard, someone was accessing their recorded information and saw that they had access to somebody else's information. So that is a pretty significant issue.
It is. Absolutely is. And this becomes extremely important when we're talking about health issues, because you do have to worry about HIPAA. You do have to worry about patient privacy. So extremely valid questions and concerns, but we're talking strategies.
Right.
How you execute is going to be part of the details.
For sure.
Can you execute? Do you have the technology to execute? Becomes part of the conversation.
And you, Darshan, have these answers. We're not going to address them today, but if you do want to see how this applies to you, please feel free to reach out. I'm sure he'll eke out some time in his super busy schedule.
I'm sure I'll find some time. And in the same way, again, if you're trying to make commuting easy, if you're trying to minimize your patients dropping out, maybe talk to their husbands, wives, or partners. Maybe talk to their support structure about getting these people into the clinic. In several parts of the world, like in India and some of the developing countries, having a husband, wife, or partner come with the patient is extremely common, and it's included in the study budget because they know that without it, you may not have the same type of recruitment. So that is going to be critically important. It's something that needs to be considered in considering the ease of commuting and ensuring that patients participate and don't drop out of your study eventually.
So I think that kind of wraps up the ease of commuting. What about reminders for future visits? Because this all ties into that.
Right. And that's exactly the point, right? So again, we can talk about those voice assistants, and those could be utilized in making sure that the appropriate reminders are given, because you might be able to do personalized reminders for specific patients. The other piece is reaching out to these subjects and saying, oh, you know what? Reminding them that they have a study coming up in X number of days. The newsletter, Major, we talked about the last time, that might be part of that process as well. You might be able to send emails. Now, what happens if they've missed? Maybe you want to have another conversation, go, oh, we were supposed to meet today. I guess you didn't make it in. No problem. We have another spot scheduled for you tomorrow. Does that work for you? And having those rescheduling conversations are also important.
By the way, keep in mind, understand, you might want to write that down, what he just said. That was a very great way of not passing on a passive-aggressive blame to the patient. We had a meeting. You must have missed. Please, does this other time work for you? It does not pass that blame on. It just moves on and allows them to schedule an appointment.
Yeah, and again, think about what we just said in terms of ease of commuting, right? Does that patient necessarily need to come in for that visit?
Right.
Can you maybe send a study staff person over to their home or their office or whatever they think is necessary?
Mm-hmm.
And making sure that you talk to the patient and explain why that visit is important, what you're trying to achieve during that visit. And as part of that process, and as obvious as this sounds, make sure you have the right contact information. Geez, how often do patients change their numbers, change their email addresses, change their physical addresses?
And don't discount mailers. Depending on your demographic,
right.
They open them also. Those quick 8x6 cards that you get in the mail. People read them.
Yeah, absolutely right. So each one of those is going to be critically important. Each one of them will enable and ensure that patients don't drop out of your study.
That's pretty solid. So, is there anything else that we need to discuss? I think today we talked about how to minimize patient loss from your clinical trial, how to keep them in. Mm-hmm. They included strategies to foster community involvement. This was in the past episode. How to address the complexity of the study and the fears of the unknown in the patients. And today we talked about how to help with the ease of commuting and reminders for future visits. Did that cover it?
Yep. It does. Very much so.
Excellent. Well, until next time, guys, my name is Major, and this is Darshan. Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to the DarshanTalks podcast, regulatory guy, irregular podcast with host Darshan Kulkarni. I am Major Hoffman. If you have any questions for Darshan, reach out via Twitter at DarshanTalks or the show's website at DarshanTalks.com.